Hi, so this session is on sketching linear graphs using the gradient and Y-intercept method. So this is the third method we have learnt so far, and there are only three methods to really draw a linear graph. So the first method we covered was method one was using a table of values. Method two, finding the x and y intercepts. And so the third method now is using the gradient from an equation. So using the gradient and the y-intercept to draw the graph. So after this session, you should be able to draw a linear graph using these three methods with no problem. So let's go ahead. Now we're going to be following some steps. So with each step, maybe write it down. You can summarize it and in your own words, but I'll be following these steps just to make sure we cover everything and it's clear on how to do this, on how to use this method. So our first step tells us we need to ensure the linear equation is in the form of y equals mx plus c. So we can see the gradient, which tells us, the gradient tells us the rise and run. And remember that when the gradient is a whole number, just like, for example, 2, it is really over an invisible 1. And that 1 will be our run. So let's just do an example. Now, for example, I'm using a graph that already has the line drawn on it. And here's the equation of the straight line. Now, to use this method, is our equation in the form of y equals mx plus c? Yes, it is. And we can see that by looking at this, our gradient is a positive 2. So m is a positive 2, or it's really 2 over 1. And our y-intercept, c, is a negative 3. So it's important we identify these features. And we know we have rise, which is our y value, over run. Rise, and it's over run. Okay, it's really important that we know the run is actually 2. So in a real life example, we could say somebody is climbing a hill, just say, for every 2 meters, they are walking 1 meter across the ground, just as an example. And that's our y-intercept. So our next step is identify whether the gradient is positive or negative. Okay, and if positive, you will be moving up. If negative, you will be moving down, okay? And the other point tells us the run, so when we move along the x-axis, the run, we always move to the right, even if the gradient is positive or negative. So when starting off, always move to the right for the run, but with the rise, sometimes we have to rise up or sometimes we have to rise down, okay? Just remember that. So for this one, and of course, the next point, so we know we have to move up or down. So for this one here, are we moving up or down? Well, it's a positive gradient. It's a positive 2. So our gradient is positive. We're going up the hill. So when doing this, we will be starting off by moving up a certain amount of units and then moving to the right. And now our starting point, we have to know where do we start from. The starting point is the y-intercept. So locate the y-intercept on the graph and plot this point. So, what is our y-intercept according to this equation? Well, the y-intercept is negative 3. So we go down to negative 3. Now imagine this line wasn't here. So we go down to negative 3, and that's our starting point. Okay? And we know that's the y-intercept. The line cuts through that y-intercept. So we located our starting point. Okay? So now, from this point, move vertically, so up or down, depending on whether the gradient is positive or negative. And then we stop. Okay, so ready? We know we're moving up because our gradient is positive. Here's our starting point. Now, what is our rise? Because we're going up, our rise is 2 units. So we go up along the y-axis because we know rise is really the y-axis and run is really the x-axis. So from this point, our starting point, let's rise up 2 units. So 1 and 2, and we stop there. Okay, now you can see how this point is not on our line just yet because we now have to do our run. How many units is our run? our run is 1 unit. And remember, this is left and this is right. Whenever you're starting this off, always move to the right, okay? So we went up 2 units and now move 1 to the right. And guess what? We end up having a point on our line. And that's basically it. All you have to do is keep doing this until you've plotted some points. So we just go to our next point. So move right horizontally, which is the run, and plot the point. We just did that. And keep doing this until a few points have been plotted. So now let's keep doing it. So do the same thing. Rise up 2 units. So 1 and 2, looking at my y-axis, and a run of 1 unit, and we move to the right. Up 2 units, 1, 2, and a run of 1. And see how these points are forming a straight line? Up 2 units and 1. And you can keep doing this forever and ever and ever. But of course, you don't have to, because once you have a few points like this, you can actually accurately draw your straight line. Now, that was pretty easy, wasn't it? And imagine this red line wasn't there. We'd have to then draw this line. But what about getting some points on the opposite side down here? Now, this is where you basically do the opposite. So with our last point on this, it tells us then to go back to the starting point, the y-intercept, and move in the opposite directions, moving left for the run. So what that means is, to move opposite, our run we have to move to the left, and our rise, because we moved up, we are now moving down. So move down 2 units. You ready? 1, 2, and move 1 unit to the left this time for our run. And there it is. Down 1, 2, and we keep going. Now we haven't got any more room, but you can see how you can keep going and going. And all you're doing really is you can sort of see you have basically steps, like stairs. So you're making some steps so you go up and across, and doing the opposite. In this case, we went down and then to the left. And that's all we have to do. So remember, let's just recap. Our first step was to make sure our equation is in the form of y equals mx plus c. And then we can see our gradient. In this case, it was positive, and our y-intercept was a -3. And the y-intercept is our starting point. That's why we have to see what our y-intercept is. Our next check was, is our gradient positive or negative? If positive, we move up. If negative, we move down. And with our run, we always move to the right when starting off. Okay, always move to the right. Even if it's positive or negative gradient, always move to the right. And then plot some points. So make up your steps. So up 2, 1 across, up 2, 1 across. And then to do the opposite, you just move in the opposite direction. Because we moved up 2 units, we moved down 2 units, and 1 to the left instead of 1 to the right. And that's it. So let's try another example. So here's our next equation, and they're asking us to draw this linear equation using the gradient and y-intercept method. So if the question asks you to use a specific method, please make sure you use that method. Okay, so our first step is, we can see, is it the equation in the form of y equals mx plus c? Yes, it is. So let's highlight our gradient. Our gradient is a positive 2/5. So I can see that is my rise, and it's positive, so I'm rising up for my y-axis, and my run is looking at my x-axis, and that's a 5. Now identify whether the gradient, so is positive, negative, we've done that. With the run, we always move to the right, and the starting point is our y-intercept. So what is our y-intercept? Our y-intercept, C, is -3. So our first point is, go to the y-axis and locate -3. That's our starting point, and that is the first point of our line that we have drawn. Now from this point, we are moving up. Now how many units? We are moving up 2 units. There's a rise of 2, so let's do that. 1 and 2, and then a run of 5. And we always move to the right no matter what. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's my next point, okay? And we may run out of room on this, but let's keep going and do the same thing. Up 2 units, so 1, 2, and a run of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm off my graph paper, but that's okay. And now I can start joining up these points and draw my straight line, but before I do, I want some points down here. So now let's do the opposite. So instead of going up 2 units, we now go down 2 units. So 1, 2. And instead of moving to the right for our run, we move to the left 5 units. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's my next point. And we can keep doing this. Down 2 units. Sorry. And it just moves. So down 2 units. 1, 2. And to the left 5 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And imagine I had grid paper. I've run out of room. And now this is where you get your ruler, join up these points, and there is your straight line. Done. And that's all you have to do. Let's just do one more question where the gradient is negative. Now have a look at this linear equation. So our first step is it in the form of y equals mx plus c? Yes, it is. Now, what is our gradient? We can't see any numbers, but our gradient is, we can see it's a negative gradient, so our gradient is negative, and we know there's an invisible 1, or an invisible 1 over 1. So something like this, we know, we can see now the rise, we're rising down, okay, is 1, and the run is also 1. So we're moving 1 unit, in this case, down, and 1 unit across. And our next step is, well, what is our starting point? Our starting point is the y-intercept, and the y-intercept this time is positive 3. So let's locate that on our graph. There's positive 3, our first point of our line. Now, because our gradient is negative, we know our line won't be going up the hill, it will be going down the hill. So our line will be coming down this way. Okay, so just keep that in mind as well. So, starting at our starting point, we are rising down. Okay, so this time we're moving down, but we always move to the right for the run when starting off. So you ready? So move down 1 unit, 1, and move to the right 1 unit. And there's your point. Move down 1. So move down 1 and then run 1 to the right, and there's your point. So please make sure you plot your point after you have gone down and then across. There is no points at the corners here. So move down 1 and to the right 1, point. Down 1, right 1, point. Down 1, and keep doing that until, I guess, there's no more room. And all these points, we will join them up, and they will make our straight line. And you can, if you wanted to, you could rub out the steps that we have made, but we now have to do the opposite so we can have some points on this side. And remember, just do the opposite. Because we went down 1, we will now, for the opposite, I'll use a different color. We went down 1, to the opposite is to go up 1. And because we moved to the right 1, we move to the left 1. And there's our point. Okay, so up 1, to the right, point. Up 1, to the right, our point. And then we can keep drawing our straight line. And there it is. Okay, so that's all you have to do. We might try one more. Now for this equation, try and get some grid paper so it's more accurate for you, and try and do this one yourself and see how you go. So our first step is it in the form of y equals mx plus c? Yes, it is. Our gradient is, to highlight it, is a negative gradient, so we know we're moving down, and it's a half. So our rise is 1, our run is 2. So we're going to be moving vertically down 1 unit and horizontally across 2 units. That's it. Our starting point is the y-intercept, and it's -1. So our first point of our line is at -1. There it is. And from this starting point, because our gradient is negative, we move down 1. And then we always move to the right for our run when starting off. You ready? So move down 1 unit and to the right 2 units. 1, 2, plot your point. Down 1, 1, 2, plot your point. Down 1, 1, 2, plot your point. And I'll stop there. If I join all these points up, I have a straight line. But let's get some more points on this side here. And just do the opposite. Because we went down 1, now let's go up 1. And because we went to the right 2 units, let's go to the left 2 units. 1, 2. And there's our next point. Okay, and keep doing that. Up 1 and to the left 2 units. 1, 2. Up 1, 1, 2. And that's it. And you can see how, you can see a pattern. These points are all diagonal. And each one when joined together, your final step is to join, this straight line makes a straight line. If you had a point out here, then obviously you've made a mistake somewhere. Okay, and that's how easy it is to use this method. Students tend to find this to be one of the hardest methods, but I think it's actually easiest if you follow those points and keep practicing. Thank you.